Well, I guess it's a pretty interesting topic, this, the personal transformation of the leader, going forward.
Mm.
Um, this is our topic for the week, and it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting topic. Fundamentally, I feel that a leader's experience is a direct reflection of how they think and feel about themselves. Like life, like their life, the health and well-being of their self-esteem is going to be a reflection of how they see and view the world around them, how they engage with their family, friends, work colleagues, and just general life in general, really. So, leadership is exactly the same in my experience. If someone's, has got a poor or weak self-esteem in whatever way that happens to be, whether that be conscious or unconscious, whether they are aware of how the negative thoughts and feelings that they have about themselves, whether that's conscious or not, it's still going to have a reflection on how they are within themselves in the workplace, and how they bring themselves to other people, and how they what type of person they attract into their team, to employ into the team, how they communicate with their team and with their clients and with other colleagues. And so I guess I feel that fundamentally that transformation is a critical aspect of, certainly for the leader. They're responsible for taking care of not just their business or their project or whatever their initiative is that they're leading, but, they've got a duty of care for the people that they're leading, the people in their team. And so, if they're not, if they've got a poor attitude around learning new things within themselves, how can I improve? How can I learn from experience to experience? If they're not doing that, then that's going to stagnate their growth. And of course, that's going to have an effect on their team. That's going to have an effect on how they lead, how they bring themselves to other people, the project or initiative that they're involved in, how they service their clients. But if they've got this really healthy attitude, if they've got an attitude of personal transformation as a leader is just an ongoing thing in their daily life and in their week and their month, and that's just part of who and what they are. Gosh, I find that type of person, there is no such thing as a barrier or as a challenge or as a mistake. They're just constantly experiencing the experiences that they have, right? And they're going, okay, great. Okay, what can we learn out of this? What can we do with this? How can I learn to become better out of this experience, whether it be a good experience or whether it be a bad experience? What can I learn out of this for myself? How can I improve out of this? And through my own personal growth, how can I then bring myself to my team? How can I bring myself to the project, initiative, or business in a healthier way that's going to help them to be able to learn and also to grow and to be able to step up into the new learning? So then the whole project and initiative can also learn and grow and evolve as well. And I find that just to be such a wonderful quality to see in someone that has a great attitude towards learning, has a great attitude towards there's no such thing as a barrier or a challenge or a cannot do type of, thing. So, look, I feel that transformation for a leader is not just a ideal. I feel it's actually a critical aspect, really.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. I suppose what I hear and what you're sharing as well is that you know, can you really lead, you know, like without bringing all of yourself to it? And I'd certainly probably suggest, you know, I'm not in a space where I can compartmentalize anymore. There's not a, you know, there's not a work leader type of me and then other types of me. It's you know, it's now one. And so it's a bit like, so, you know, can we bring, you know, compartments of ourselves? And I don't think that's going to work. It certainly hasn't worked for me. So when I look at the leadership and the way that I lead, it is that thing. And I suppose as we talk more about, you know, aligning more towards an evolutionary aspect of leadership and how do we continue to evolve? Well, it's a bit like more transformation then becomes a part of the conversation, doesn't it? You know, it means we're always continuing to transform. There's always something change within it. And yet it's certainly one of the, what I would call one of the pitfalls I've fallen into in the past is trying to lead a transformation effort, thinking that everybody else has to change and I have to lead them through it. I have to lead them through their change. That's pretty. I don't know whether that's naive or foolish or what, but it's not that. It's a bit like, well, if you're going to lead someone through a change process and an evolutionary process, well, then don't you need to be the one going through it first?
Absolutely.
You know, yeah. Yeah, it's a huge aspect, and I suppose, you know, that's where it does. You know, you mentioned the whole self-esteem thing before, and you know, I like to think that there's probably, you know, there's some really foundational aspects of us as leaders of actually going, well, you know, what's the makeup and what do I need within me? What needs to be healthy and built on and growing, and certainly our self-esteem is something that, you know, in my experience has been a constant you know, program of work over a lifetime. I don't think you're ever really there. I think that's an example of something that's always evolving, but then also challenging all of our assumptions and all of our biases and our judgments and our attachments. And I suppose certainly early on, one of the things that I noticed in me was the whole thing of attachments. So if something was working, you know, and it didn't matter whether it was a position or a structure of a team or the number of people that were in the team or the types, and when it was working and things like that, it was like, you know, there can be a hesitancy to actually want to change that because it's working. It's, you know, the old, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But, you know, that sort of thing is like going, well, actually, no matter how it is, it needs to evolve. So that's one that needs to be thrown into the bin. And it's like, well, I need to really be aware of where my attachments are, where I like to keep things the same, you know, where I like to it's almost like a bit of a safety thing. It's a predictability. I know this is going to work because it's worked before. And judgments and biases and I think they're a great example of some of the pitfalls that we can fall into along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard this lovely, well, I guess it's just an example of there's no such thing as just standing still.
Yeah.
I get the exact words right about, you know, of what this other person shared to me, but I'll give it a go. And, you know, we're just talking about, you know, there's no such thing as being stagnant. There's no such thing as just, you know, being still in the context of I'm just going to concentrate on maintaining because, the entropy of life and of, just life, people around you and so forth. The example that they gave was, okay, if you're in a river, you might be trying to maintain where you're at within yourself in the river by not doing much. You're not doing anything wrong or bad, but you're not doing anything towards your growth. You're not, actively participating in new learning and applying your new learning. You just, you know what? I'm just going to have a break. But the thing is that within the river, if you're not paddling upstream, you just trying, I'm going to let go and just maintain. You're just going to flow down the river.
Yeah.
You just flow down the river, even though that you may think for a while that you're actually just maintaining. But in actual fact, the entropy of everything around you, if you're not actually constantly, engaging with what's happening around you and, okay, what can we learn out of this? How can we adapt this? How can we change this? How can we grow into here and here and here? Things just slowly start to erode, might not be seemingly noticeable in a short period of time, but things just start to slide over a period of time, start to erode. And so again, a critical aspect of the leader is to be aware of that, consciously aware of that, and be always looking towards, working towards that entropy. And how can we? What else do we need to learn? How can we improve as a culture? What do I need to improve within myself? What's not working within myself? How am I bringing myself to the team? How's that affecting them? How am I bringing myself to our clients or to the community or to whoever that I'm serving as a leader? What's the impact of that? What's the response to how I'm bringing myself? What can I learn from that? And even, getting some, asking people that's willing to give you honest feedback, getting some feedback from them around, well, how am I bringing myself, and, sucking it up and, okay, just keep me with it, and really learn from that. So like we've been sharing, I feel it's a critical aspect of a healthy leader, a healthy and mature leader, at least. I reckon a lot of people would be saying, yeah, I do that. But how often? That's the big question. How often?
I know.
There's those, leaders that embrace change. I undertake some personal development on a yearly or 6 monthly basis. That's great. It's better than not. But learning is around us all of the time. And so in those seemingly small experiences that we have when we're engaging, how am I thinking and feeling within myself? What can I learn from that? In those small interactions with our team, how are they going? If we're not taking notice of how they're feeling, how they're thinking, someone might be starting to sink. But if we're not consciously aware of it, putting some focus on, how's everyone going, then things could actually be eroding. Things could be eroding.
And the thing in there is that if, this is where the introspection aspect is really important, is that quite often, like even if it's in a change initiative or any other type of initiative, really, is that when we do have people that are struggling with the change, with grounding it and living out of it and adapting to it, quite often we can actually then go, there's something wrong with them. They're not getting it. and then it starts to become a remediation issue for them, whereas a really appropriate thing to do is to actually turn that back around to the leader, from the leader from an introspective perspective, and saying, oh, am I bringing everything that these ones need? Are they getting the messages delivered to them in a manner that they can take on board and understand and can work with? So, there's this thing that often happens, and again, I actually think a lot of this stems from, almost like the conversation that we had in the first of this series of videos, and talking about some of the fundamental premises of the way that we come together is through this thing of self-interest. And sometimes, this aspect of self-interest actually brings with it a lot of self-interest, so it is like, well, I'm okay, I've got it, I know what I'm doing, they haven't got it, they're not doing it, therefore they're the problem. And yeah, sometimes if we can break that down, and that's why, I think the worldview aspect is really important when it comes to this transformation side of things. So if I'm looking at me as an individual human that's separate from everything else, and that is motivated by self-interest, my worldview, my values, my behaviors are going to be really, really different than if I'm sitting here going, man, I'm one example of a human being amongst a whole sea of human beings across the planet. And I'm living on this particular planet, and we all need to be living in some aspect of harmony, not only with ourselves and with the planet, but also with the minerals on the planet, with the plants on the planet, with the animals on the planet. And if we actually start to understand that we actually all have to find a way so that we can coexist, and that one is not trying to dominate the other, and then I see myself as one expression of that, and then everything that we do needs to consider, how is this for the planet? How is this for the minerals? How is this for the plants? How is this for the animals? And we start to have these different worldviews. Well, then we actually start to go, man, there's a whole heap of value changes that are in there. I see the world completely differently. I look at the value of this very differently. Now I understand that when we're actually talking about evolution, we're not just talking about how do we as the dominant species actually become more dominant and be bigger and take a larger chunk of the pie. It's actually, how do we evolve, but evolve with everything else, and understand that we can't exist unless everybody else on the planet and everything else on the planet is actually evolving with us. And so, I think one of the things that happens with that is the self-interest model is one that's very much on this separateness. And then this more collective planet-based thing is actually more of, well, actually we're a collective. There's no separation in any of it. Our behaviors, our values, and what we do and what we don't do impacts everybody and everything. And so when we start to do that, we go, man, the transformation then that has to happen is that we actually all need to come along a journey. And so when we're leading an initiative, whatever it is or whatever it's for, and we're actually operating out of that worldview, well, then it's one of actually going, wow, there's all of us, and we all need to be moving in that direction. We all need to be living, out of that vision, and that's where we're heading. And in many respects, it's then maybe a very, individual type program, because you have to help everybody transform. But then it comes back to even more introspection to the leader. How does the leader continue to evolve in something that's continuing to evolve, and is again having sights forward with the eyes raised a little, eyes raised a little, and looking forward to going, well, that's actually now our next heading. How do I prepare myself for that? And then how do I actually lead everybody else to that? And what becomes incumbent in that is how do I continue to transform? Because now I've actually, it's almost like at that point I've actually gone, well, actually I'm here to actually participate in evolution. So by definition, that means I'm here to constantly change and grow. So if I'm going to constantly change and grow, maybe I should constantly change and grow. And it's like, oh man, all right, now what do we do? And that's where a lot of these things, like, that introspection side of it, I reckon, starts to become really, really important, because as a leader, I think we can learn pretty well of when there's bullshit around us. We can have a good bullshit meter and go, yeah, listen, that's rubbish. But I suppose one of the things that we need to do is develop our internal bullshit meter. And we need to be able to say, listen, sorry, I'm feeding myself rubbish at the moment. Is that I'm actually saying I'm already there, but actually, if I'm honest, I'm actually rather attached to things being the way they are.
Yeah.
There's certain things in my self-esteem that I'm getting away with, and they don't really impact things. But you know what? I could probably be, I could have a far higher level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I probably need to work on that if I'm going to help everybody else evolve as well, because it's a bit like if I'm not, if I've got a gap, whatever that gap is in my self-esteem, it's almost like I'm then facilitating transformation for everybody else as well. And like, I'm almost encouraging everybody else to have a little fenced off area. It's just like, well, here's the bits that I don't go in. You have that bit as well. Because that's by definition, I suppose, if that's what I'm holding back, then it's going to be difficult for others to follow as well. So yeah. It's quite a big thing when we start pulling this apart and actually, start from a concept of saying, oh, well, this, it sounds really cool and it sounds really effective to go, well, the leader needs to be the first to transform and that. But actually, when you sit and look at it and you allow your worldview to evolve, and we actually see this planet for how it is and our role on it and our role together, then we start to get more of an understanding of what evolution looks like. And then this whole concept of running businesses solely to make extreme profits and hoard wealth and those sorts of things, it's like we're not going to evolve. We're not going to evolve as one that way. So we need to find a way to evolve collectively, and we start by actually having the appetite to keep looking within and keep challenging what's happening here. And it's important then that we surround ourselves with ones that will maybe not even directly challenge us on things, but just will be living the evolution values and principles in such a way that they can't help but influence you along the same sort of path. So yeah, I think it becomes important as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love all that, what you just shared. Yeah, I completely agree. The whole alignment to something that is greater. Using the word evolution. If and of course that's all a reflection of the person, how they think and feel about themselves. If they've got an alignment towards a higher ethics, a higher ideal of something.
Yeah.
And that's what they're aligned to. That's where they're going to head if they're constantly looking at, okay, well, what else do I need to learn? What else do I need to change within myself to be able to head in that direction? What is that alignment? Getting really, really clear on that objective or that goal, whether that be personal or professionally or socially or whatever it may be. It's usually all part of the same, thing in my experience. But critical aspect, and also using that to be able to help those in your team to be able to, come into that same direction, because if someone's in your team that is not aligned to the team alignment, whatever that higher ethics is or whatever that higher ideal is, then they're just going to be working against the team because they're aligned to something else, and that's in my experience, that's really important to be observing that, who's not aligned into the team ethics, who's not aligned to where this team is actually heading and working towards, because first of all, if they're not aligned, it gives us insight into there may be something going on in their personal life where they may actually just need a little bit of time to focus on that, so then they can come back into the team. Their personal circumstances may just take their attention elsewhere for a while, or either they may have a complete different shift in priority within themselves and their alignment is not the same. So, as the leader, it's their responsibility to either help them to come back into the team or either help them to move in towards the new alignment that they're prioritizing, which is, at least in my experience, generally outside of your project or your initiative or business. It's like, hey, thanks for being a part of this. I get that you don't want to continue being a part of this. Your priorities elsewhere now, but hey, let's support you to head into the direction where you want to go. What a wonderful thing to be constantly, feeling the team, observing, who's aligned and who's not, taking notice of those small little things that you pick up when you walk through, engage with your team, whether it be through meetings or you say good morning to them each day, or the type of words or the type of energy that they're actually giving off when engaging with you. Critical alignment to higher ethics and ideals. Absolutely.
I think ethics is a wonderful topic. You probably are like big enough for us just to record a video on ethics, but when you can immediately feel how the ethical situation of when I see myself as a single human motivated out of self-interest. You can see what my ethical alignment might be, in that. Whereas if I'm adopting more of an evolutionary one and more of a oneness approach that we're all a part of something a whole lot bigger, well, then the ethical discussion actually becomes quite different. And so this is where it's really important. I say it's really important to find this vision or this worldview, as I often call it, is that so that everybody can understand what that worldview comes out of, and a vision for where we're going and what we're doing, because it's alignment to that. You mentioned that great word alignment before, and so the more we offer that, and we offer that in a way that allows as many to participate and to understand and have then their own experience of it, the better. Because one of the questions that's always got to remain, if we've got someone within our teams that doesn't feel completely aligned, is that, listen, there could be something in their world that, first of all, is either being challenged, so they might be experiencing some resistance, some avoidance, some denial. The priorities could be elsewhere, and that's fine. But also, it could be me as a leader. I've actually yet to speak, communicate, share in a way that actually allows them to get their own feeling of where we're going and what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's something that we've always got to balance. We've always got to play with in that. But that's, and then you make a great point as well, is that as leaders, we're often going to have ones coming in and out of our teams, and I've got to say, got a perspective that, especially how I leave something, is in some respects even more important than how I come in and how I am when I'm there, because it's that how can you come to a point that it's stepping away from something, but not then needing to destroy it, or needing for it to be dramatic or even big reactions and a lot along the way. Is that how would it be if we find these ways of transitioning out, and have transitioning out as just another process that we all go through, as it is of transitioning in and then living and working and being in amongst it at the same time. Maybe that's a little idealistic, and maybe there's a lot of human emotion and other things that come into that. But I actually find that really important, that the process of choosing to move on and then going into something else is just as important as anything else. And then from a leadership perspective, it's just as important as well to test again, bringing this thing back to leader being the first one to transform. So as a leader, how are you actually going to handle that situation where either someone is choosing to move on from what you're doing, or you've come to an agreement that it's time for them to move on? And so how do you handle that? How do you help them move on? Is it something that that you're actively engaged? Because again, if we take a more of a holistic view and an evolutionary view of this, or maybe the way that we help people transition out of our initiatives goes through a whole level of transformation as well, because who knows if they might need to go out and actually have a whole nother journey, whole other experience, and go and do a whole heap of other things, and then at some point in time maybe our paths cross again. And then invariably when we connect back in, probably the major thing that we're actually going to reflect on was how would we part to begin with, and if that was relatively harmonious, well then maybe it's a lot easier to be relatively harmonious in reconnecting and moving on.
It's that common basic fundamental principle that all humans just want to be valued. Whether in the workplace or a project or whatever, we're expressing to the new person that comes into your project or the business, we really value you, so that's why we're employing you into the team. But like you're saying, it's critically as important, maybe even a little bit more important from some perspectives, that they feel just as valued when they leave. And of course, all of that is a complete reflection of the leadership within that project or that team or that business. Is the leader, are they holding on to any grudges, or are they able to see past them and go, you know what, you're still a human being and none of us are perfect, and I just accept you the way that you are, and I really highly valued everything you ever did with us and for us, and I value you as a person. And when that's genuine, those relationships just tend to keep on going, on afterwards, after the employment experience has ended.
It's a big one. But the other thing in there is that if we are focused on leader as the first to transform, it's incumbent then for us to actually surround ourselves with ones that are going to challenge our evolution. That's a really important, is that you don't necessarily need ones around you that are going to confirm that you're great exactly how you are. And that's that's okay. It's you want to be accepted, but you also want to be around a group that are going to challenge. And challenge is such a wonderful thing because it can be done in such an incredibly supportive way to actually ask questions and just challenge the way things are and the way that we see things and how do we evolve in a certain direction. And so again, it comes down to the a lot of this comes back to the self-esteem.
Yeah.
Goodness me. No, it does come down to the
Those guys always talking about self-esteem.
it is, because that's we that starts to determine. In a minute I'll be able to speak. It does influence how open we are to actually sit in an environment where there might be something, not even in conflict, but it could just be challenging. How robust are we to actually sit in an environment that's really challenging? And it doesn't mean that it needs to be always challenging, but it just means there could be moments of challenging in there. And am I inclined to either shut down and pull back, which means I'm not engaging in it and I'm not actually working with my team to evolve through it, or am I taking it personally? Am I reacting to it in a certain way because there's just some emotional bits in me that are just not robust enough to actually go, well, yeah, actually I've got this stuff, but you know what, it doesn't need to affect that. So there's all of these sorts of examples of all of the things that can come up in us as leaders that influence and impact the way that we interact and respond with those around us. And it doesn't just need to be our team members. It can be the people that we're serving through whatever initiative that we're doing, or like people that we're actually partnering with to actually get things done. It affects the relationships on all levels and in all environments. And so hopefully someone that's listening to this conversation that we're having is actually starting to go, wow, this process of transformation has no end. And it's something that we need to be constantly involved in, and it needs to be a part of what we do. And with that, we need to have the courage to just keep stepping forward into the unknown. And from there, we start to shore up some things and keep evolving as one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. That it just reminds me of, as a leader, it's not always, sweets and roses all the time. It's not always, part of the role of the leader is to be able to engage in growth is challenging. A business that is growing in an upward cycle is challenging. A business that is declining is also challenging. A business that is sort of stagnant, like we talked about before, is either, generally it's just been, erodes over time. So, the role of a leader is to be engaging with, what's working and what's not working, with challenges. How do I grow this? How do I change this? How do I adapt this and that? And when we're, as a leader, engaging with other leaders, of responsibility, and two people don't agree on the same action going forward, what is the healthy leader doing to be able to not lose their shit? What are they doing so the stress doesn't amount up in them on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, so one day they just completely crack it, because healthy leaders, in my experience, they have mechanisms or practices in place to be able to deal with the challenges in their life, or the stresses in their life, or the points of challenge or difference in their life, whether that be that they go for a walk in nature or ride a bike or go for a run or something physical to be able to let all that stress and steam off, or whether they engage in reflective practices such as journaling or meditating, or they may even have a friend or a therapist to be able to help just to bounce things back and forward to be able to get those those other perspectives and learning. I feel that that's really critically important for the transformational leader, for any leader really. What outlets do they have? What are they doing about the challenges that they are not able to process there in the moment? Of course, a mature leader will have hopefully have developed themselves to the point where they just don't get affected by points of difference or challenges. They're able to, stay really grounded. They're aligned to their higher ethics, and they're really centered within themselves, and they're able to respond in a really, grounded and most appropriate manner at all times. But, a lot of leaders aren't there yet with that. So, those that aren't there with that, what are they doing? I think that's really important, is for people to have these outlets or these practices in their life where they can, where they're not accumulating all of this unnecessary mental stress or emotional stress or physical stress. They can do something with it. They can process it in some sort of type of way, in a healthier way, so they can just, feel it and let it go, and then continue to embrace with that higher ideal or higher ethics, whatever they're aligned to. So yeah, we've been talking about this for quite some time in the context of the leadership and again, I just feel that it's a critical aspect, part of the attitude of a leader, of a healthy leader.
Yeah. What I love in there, just the term that just keeps jumping out at me there is self-care. And I reckon that's, I suppose, over the last, maybe more over the last 5 years, maybe the last 10 as a stretch. I suppose one of the things that I find, like really comforting now is in more of a global leadership conversation that's going on, how self-care has actually started to become far more first of all, an acceptable topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Which is that there's a recognition that, geez, hang on a minute, if we're going to keep going on like this, we actually have to keep all things healthy. And so that means, we need to look after our physical health, or we need to look after our emotional health. We need to look after our mental health. And there's a whole, what that means is that if you looked at, the week of a leader that's aligned in such a way, well, then you're probably not going to see someone that's working, 16 to 20 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. You're actually going to see someone that's more, that's actually going to be building in blocks of time to do different things, because that it's certain things. And I suppose, Stephen Covey used to call this sharpening the saw, which is the same sort of thing. It's like making sure that there is actually time blocked out in the week to do certain things. And it might be yoga, it might be meditation, it might be, I know a lot of leaders that just block out some time that's just contemplation time.
Yeah.
Just shut everybody out and either go sit in the office or just go out somewhere and just let whatever's coming through the mind come through the mind, and let's just let it pass through, and just have that time of reflection and rejuvenation as we need it. And so some of these things, I suppose, more 10 years ago, some of these sort of things might have been in the calendar, but would have been really, really readily sacrificed for the want of more work.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm seeing it now, and certainly in my experience now, it's to maintain a level of awareness and presence that my teams need me to have so that I can lead them in certain ways and lead them into areas that they're not actually looking at, but they're relying upon me to look at. It means that I need to make sure that I am caring for self a lot, and so that I am offering that time of reflection and then challenging them to do the same. So yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the whole topic of self-care has really transformed as well, and I'm loving the look of that. And the more that we can actually start to go, well, actually self-care is not a bonus if I do not, if I do not invest in my self-care, there is no way known I can actually achieve the outcomes or the initiatives that we're looking for, nor can I actually expect my team to keep performing and to keep doing things. So it's really, it's really important. It's a and that's, that goes into some of the the principles that we're going to start to talk more and more about, of as we go through these videos. Hopefully everybody's starting to get a feel of the perspective of which we're coming from, and what leadership looks like in this sort of an environment, and what matters, what leadership activities matter and what doesn't. And it's like, well, self-care is actually not just, it's not a bonus, and it's not it's imperative. It's absolutely imperative. And that doesn't mean that, like, we throw a lot of a lot of leadership aspects out. Like we don't forever discard the autocratic leader. It's not like we discard that completely, because what we do is we actually know that in certain circumstances, we're going to need to be autocratic. We're going to need to make a decision and ask the team to do that. But what we do that from a perspective that we've invested so heavily in the relationship and so much in the transformation activity, that they have such a level of confidence in us that they know when we've got to that moment where we need to make an autocratic decision, they'll go, well, I know, okay, I know you need us to go there. So they just, they head in that direction. But what that means, it's very much incumbent upon the leader to build that level of relationship with the teams so that they just do it. Otherwise, you're using autocratic leadership out of fear. And fear-based autocratic leadership is not going to work. And it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. It's it's not something that's actually going to allow transformation or revolution.
Well, I wouldn't even really call that person a leader. I'd call that type of person a dictator more than a leader.
Yeah. And this is, and that's the thing. It just depends on the role and the circumstance. In some instances, it's really applicable. It's certainly when whether the teams that are working in an ER, and and I've shared a few times of working on investigating cybersecurity incidents, is that because time is so precious, that the teams need me looking up with a far broader perspective than they are. They've got their head down, they're doing their bit of work, and they need to know that I'm the one that's actually up there looking. And then when they look up and I say, go that way, they just don't question it. They go that way because they know I've got the benefit of looking up and actually have seen different things going on, and that I can point them in that direction, and they just go there. And so it's definitely, I'm very much one that says some of these tools need to be used in the situation that best matches for it. So there's always going to be a situation where whether you call it autocratic or directive or whatever, there's always a case for that. But I've certainly found that it is most effective in its sparing use of it, just infrequent. Otherwise it starts to erode pretty quickly.
Well, let's unpack that, because that's interesting. I feel that it all depends on your motive. The fear-based, motive-driven person, that is egocentric, and it's all about what they can get out of it, and being the controlling factor over what they're leading. Leading with fear. That's the dictator. Whereas what you're talking about is more a functional, highly operating functional team. That is, everyone's got a role within that, and my motive is to help us to navigate in towards that alignment, and because this is where we're all going, and that's coming from a very different place. But yeah. I love the whole care thing. Like we've been talking.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it?
It really is. There's that saying. Okay, we've got to try to find work-life balance, and well, in my experience, it doesn't exist. Like the work-life balance thing. Like if you really love what you're doing, whether in your project or whatever you're leading, you tend to put a lot of time, effort, energy into that, which then can take up a lot of your personal time. And if we were to look at it that's purely through the lens of work-life balance, well, it doesn't exist. However, the person, if they're really loving what they're doing, could actually be having a really fulfilling and enriching life because they're actually doing what they really want to do.
Yeah.
But if we flip that and talk about that type of person that really loves what they're doing, and flip that saying from work-life balance into work-life care, they're caring for what they're doing within themselves, in their personal life, in their professional life. It's just all part of the one thing, work-life care. Okay, well, I'm feeling to spend more time in my personal life to be able to care and nurture for these particular things over my life. Oh, I now need to go and care and nurture other aspects in my team or my business or the project or the client. And that work-life care kind of just flows much more gracefully than trying to create a work-life balance, at least in my experience. And, that doesn't mean that someone has to be working 80 hours or 60 hours or ridiculous amount of hours to achieve that work-life care thing. At periods in my life, I've worked stupid hours because that's what was required. But then also at other times, I was working 20, 25 hours still in the context of leading large teams. And again, because different things just needed more attention and more nurturing and more care. And I feel that culturally that would be a great thing for people to really embrace within their own team and within their own business, of being able to give people the time and space to be able to care and nurture the things that they need to care and nurture for. Whether that be in the team or the project, or whether that be in their personal life. And of course, this is happening a lot. We're seeing a lot of this. Employers giving their team, their members, time to be able to focus on things that are important to them. Work-life care, I love it.
Well, you see, I actually see the self-care thing for me comes in under the topic of sustainability. It's one of those things of going, well, is our, can the planet be sustained with us doing this thing that we're doing, whether we, like that it could be mining or it could be anything, it's like, can we have a sustainable future doing this thing to the planet? And it's like, we challenge ourselves to do the same thing for, the plants. And, are we destroying forests? Is that sustainable to our future? The plant's future, the planet's future, is that sustainable? And the same thing to animals. And then within us, it comes back to going, can I sustain myself on this path of transformation, understanding that as the leader, I'm the first to transform. Can I do that in a sustainable way and not have an adequate amount of self-care? It just doesn't, it's almost like it doesn't compute.
Yeah.
And listen, I certainly came from, moments in my life as well, where I worked stupid hours. My God, they were stupid hours. And they were not sustainable. It was as simple as that. And if you then go back to this, self-focused human that's motivated out of self-interest, well, then it's about, well, I want to go hard and go strong and get as much as I can as soon as I can. And if I'm leading an initiative like that, and I've got people working themselves to the bone like that, and then one of them falls over and can't work anymore, well, I get a broom and I sweep them out of the way, and I bring somebody else in that's prepared to keep going like that. That's out of that model. Whereas what I'm looking for now, it's like, well, actually, in an evolutionary perspective, we need to do things in a sustainable manner, and that starts to challenge every aspect of everything that we do, including how we look after and prioritize ourselves. And it's like it just doesn't compute in that world anymore that we could do this and not adequately care for self to make sure that there's enough downtime that we're that we're looking after our physical bodies. We're putting the right sort of food in. We're getting adequate rest. We're doing the sort of things that rejuvenate us and allow us to keep going on. And in the end, that actually just makes us, more open and more in the flow of evolution and transformation. So, yeah.
Yeah, most certainly.
Well, there you go. That feels like a conversation about the leader is the first to transform.
It does. It does. Gosh,
Yeah.
there's so much that we can just, it just, flows through and just unpacks, and there's so much more. It just keeps coming.